All right, let's talk Oregon Ducks. Clearly one of the best teams in college football. Once again, Dan Lanning has this crew ready to make a lot of noise and hopefully, if you're a Ducks fan, of course, take a massive step forward and finally bring home that long-awaited national title. And to that end, they're going to need a lot of new guys, a lot of young guys stepping up when their number is called. And there's one guy in particular that had high expectations, and folks, he is meeting and dare I say exceeding them if you listen to the coaching staff. We'll get to that latest news plus some interesting data in just 1 second. But first, I'm Nick. That is Andrew, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, the Oregon Ducks, of course, a little bit of a transition this offseason. Feels like every offseason the Ducks have a big-time playmaker, big-time quarterback go on to the National Football League. This year's no different, but this time the Oregon Ducks have a superstar freshman wide receiver by the name of Corey Moore. We were corrected in a prior video that his name allegedly from a family member. So if we're wrong, please, give us a little grace here that he goes by Corey. So we're going to call him Corey Moore, though, of course, superstar, five-star wide receiver for the Ducks. He was this uber talented guy, came in making a lot of noise, and based on recent reporting, that noise is carrying over with massive praise across the entire coaching staff. Let's pull up the first of two reports here, then we'll get to that data on the other side. This first report is courtesy of Ducks Wire. According to wide receiver coach Ross Douglas, Moore is built for that. His mindset and mentality set him apart from the rest. I just think the 1-2 and the desire to be a good football player, I think it's there, Douglas said on Friday, so this is a few days ago now. He's gotten better as training camp goes, and ever since he's been on campus, he's just, again, a great kid, very curious, wants to be good, practices hard, and is very competitive. He's going to be a very, very good player for Oregon, and hopefully he contributes a lot this year. That's one report right there that I think is more important than anything we've seen from this young wide receiver yet. We know he's an incredibly talented kid. And we're talking Jeremiah Smith from Ohio State level talent. We're talking Williams down in Tuscaloosa, Alabama level talent here. But does he have the mental makeup? Doesn't he have the mentality, the want to, the drive? It's hard. We're talking 17, 18-year-old kids here, right? We're putting a lot of pressure, a lot of discussion on a kid who, theoretically was wrapping up senior prom a few months ago if he attended prom, right? That kind of thing. Does he have the mental makeup going to Eugene and taking on that responsibility, that want to, that drive? The coaches say, yeah, he does. He may be young, but he's got the mindset of a champion already. Love to see that, but that's not it. We have a report from SI.com as well. Talking now to Dan Lanning, of course. Lanning revealed in exclusive interviews with Oregon Ducks on SI how Moore has impressed early in his Oregon tenure. He wants to be perfect, Lanning told Amaranthus. He works extremely hard. He does. He has huge expectations, and I think that's hard, but he's handled that really, really well. He loves ball. He works every single day to get better. Really talented, obviously, and I think he'll make a big impact for our team. So I'm excited to see what he says to Corey, and we're going to say excited to see what Corey does. So again, when we look at this young, super talented wide receiver, the fact that he's putting in the work, the fact that he loves ball, the fact that he is so committed to being great, he's embracing the high expectations. You're talking about a 25-year-old maturity on an 18-year-old kid. That's so rare, right? What we saw from Jeremiah Smith last year, Ohio State basically created this massive protective bubble around him, uber talented, freak five-star athlete, and he was able to kind of get through and figure things out. And by the end of the season, had become the transcendent wide receiver freshman superstar that we all know he is today. Moore, it looks like he's already there, and a big part of that is the mental makeup. Every single year, and whether it's just at wide receiver or other positions, there's 10, 15, 20, however many, like 5-star and a bunch of other high-level 4-stars that are top-flight athletes, like freak athletes, just phenomenal football players, dominated high school the way very few people do, but not all of them become superstars. It's because the mental side of the game. Can you handle the stress? Can you handle the expectations? Do you actually really love football? Do you have a work ethic? Were you just relying on uber levels of talent in high school, and now that you're going up against the best of the best, are you willing to put up that extra time in the weight room? Are you willing to put in that extra time in the film room? And right now, Moore is doing all of that. He's meeting every single one of those tasks, checking every single one of those boxes. That is obviously a great sign for the Ducks. But it's even more important than just a 5-star doing great things and off to a great start in his career. It's the position in which he's doing this in, the wide receiver position, and it's more important than people realize. And we got a graphic here I want to pull up, Miles, if you don't mind going ahead and throwing it up on the screen right now. So we took the top 6 contenders, what we deem the top 6 contenders in college football, and we've done this a lot over the past few months. So some of you may have already seen this before. And we looked at and the top 6 teams we chose were Oregon, obviously, Ohio State, Texas, Georgia, Alabama, and Notre Dame, right? We took the top 6 sort of blue blood dominant programs right now. Some people may argue Alabama isn't. I'd say 1 or 2 down years with Kalen DeBoer doesn't, negate 20 plus years of dominance we saw under Nick Saban. So those are the 6 what I would consider top echelon blue bloods right now. And what you see on the screen is last season's PFF grades for those 6 teams. You see running grade, running defensive grade, overall defensive grade, run defense grade, and coverage grade. And one thing you'll notice, and we didn't put any of the team names on here for a reason, is that if you look at, for example, the running column, they're all pretty much in the same area, right? The best team is 94, the second best team is 91, the worst team is 89. Tiny range. How about overall defense? The best is 94, the worst is 90. Again, tiny range. Same thing with run defense. Coverage is the only one where there's one outlier. That was Georgia, ironically. But most of them, if you get rid of that outlier, the best is 93, the worst is 90. Again, tiny range. If you look at the top blue blood teams, the top programs in college football, they all operate in terms of overall performance in these major categories so darn close to each other. There's almost, no standout here when it comes to rushing attack, when it comes to overall defense, coverage grade, run defense grade. They're all so close together. None separates from the pack. But there is one category where there is a standout, where there is a discriminating factor, and that's receiving grade. Let's go ahead and pull up our next graphic here. And this is those same 6 teams, but this is the receiving grade. And you can see there's a big gap between worst to first. In fact, there's a big gap between first, which was Ohio State last year, and second, which ironically Oregon was right around that 77 mark. So you can see, looking at this right here, that wide receiver, unlike rushing, unlike overall defense, run defense, coverage, this is where you can discriminate. Top flight wide receivers, top flight playmakers at the wide receiver position. That's how you separate yourself from the big boys. That's how you separate yourself in the postseason. Look, we saw that at Ohio State. We saw that with Ohio State against Oregon. We saw that with them against Texas. We saw that against Notre Dame in the national championship game. They just had one more playmaker or 2 more playmakers, depending on who they were playing, than the other guys, right? And top-notch playmakers like Jeremiah Smith, for example. Now Oregon, with a kid like Moore emerging, this allows them to cover up some of that gap, inch closer to Ohio State. I still think when it comes to receiving weapons, right now, Ohio State is clearly the best in the country. Not an indictment on anyone else, but I think that's just the reality. You got to understand reality. You got to look at what I think are facts right now. But with the emergence of Moore and his fast start and his great maturity and his mental makeup, I think the Oregon Ducks are closing that gap. And if they can close that gap significantly by the time the postseason rolls around, things could get very, very interesting in the top of the college football world. Remember, we're talking the blue bloods here, because to be totally honest, there's probably only like 6 or 8 teams that can even win a national championship. The playoff is fun and exciting, but it still comes down to the best 6 or 8 teams. And I think we're looking at them here right now. Again, Oregon, Ohio State, we look at Texas, we look at Georgia, we look at Alabama, we look at Notre Dame, maybe throwing like a Penn State on the outside there. Even then, I don't really think Penn State's a contender. Those are the teams that can win a national title, and the emergence of Moore allows the Oregon Ducks, like Ohio State last year, to make the receiving grade a key discriminator against their competition. All right, Miles, I know I threw a lot at you. I'm very curious what your thoughts are on everything Moore in Oregon. But first, Ducks fans, in the comment section below, talking wide receivers, right? So who, in your opinion, is the greatest wide receiver in Oregon Ducks history? A couple different names you could go here. Could go old school, could go pretty recent and kind of middle ground here, but only pick one. Who, in your opinion, is the greatest wideout in Oregon history? Let us know in the comment section below. But Miles, enough from me. Lord knows I've said enough. Over to you now. What are your thoughts on this latest news out of Eugene?
Yeah, Nick, I think the graph you have of the receiving grades, that's the most interesting thing to me, because as we've grown and seen college football is, developed, everything's so close. Like you said, all those teams are so close when you're a really top flight team, and it's really gotten to a point where they're that receiving great receivers. You look at teams that win national championships, they've got great receivers, and all of these teams have great receivers, but you have to have a bevy of great receivers nowadays. And I think college football has now kind of gotten like the NFL at one certain area, as far as when young guys can come in and contribute. When I think NFL, I think young running backs can really come in the NFL in their first year and make a big difference, a big impact on team. Young wide receivers, kind of, but you don't necessarily see a 7th round wide receiver come in the NFL and make a big impact early on. There's a lot of nuance to the game, but running back position, that's the case. They can come in and make big impacts. In the college game, the way this game is structured, the way these offenses are structured, they're so, passing friendly, they're quarterback friendly. There's so many good OCs out there. You can have a young wide receiver, and we saw it twice last year, come in and really make a huge impact on these teams. And I think that's what you have to be a top flight contender. Oregon, great team. A lot of really good wide receivers in that program. A lot of guys went on to the NFL as well. So you have to get guys to come in and help reset, throw, transfers are going to help, but you have to have young guys come in and make a big difference. In the case of Moore, I think this is a guy who he has all the athleticism. You look at his track accolades, the guy is a speedster. He's done all kinds of 100-meter, really great races, 200-meter great races, long jump, high jump, whatever the case may be. He's such an athletic guy that I think he can come in and really do a lot of good stuff at the wide receiver position for Oregon. So I think, like Ohio State last year, you showed the graph at the top of the rankings for receiving. The Heartline's done a great job developing that program, getting a lot of great wide receivers in Ohio State. We're starting to see Oregon get a lot of those guys. Tez Walker, he left. He was a great wide receiver 2 years ago for Oregon, doing a lot, or a year ago for Oregon, doing a lot of good stuff early on. We're seeing, what he can do, but you got to have another guy come in and do a lot of good stuff. I think Corey Moore can be that guy. I think there's a lot of great news at the wide receiver position on the horizon for Oregon. I think we're going to see, again, a young wide receiver come take the league by storm, take college football by storm and say, hey, I'm here. I'm going to make some noise. And that guy is definitely Corey Moore.
Yeah, you bring up a great point. I just want to end on one final thing here is what we're seeing in terms of the narrowness of the competition. That's a function of the NIL world and the transfer portal world, right? That's the thing that happens in the NFL, right? We basically have free agency in college sports. In the NFL, parity, the teams are so close together. We're seeing that with the top programs in the NFL and college football because they all basically have a reasonably similar amount of dollars to spend for NIL and NIL collectives, transfers, things like that. So among the blue bloods, the talent gap is going to get narrower and narrower. That means the way you win playoff games is having elite 5-star, just superstar, out of this world, all world playmakers. Jeremiah Smith for Ohio State. Corey Moore looks like he's going to be the next guy on that list. Again, great mindset, great mentality, putting in the work, incredible amount of just physical gifts. I think he's a day one superstar for the Oregon Ducks, and I'm really excited to see what he does for this offense this season. I think he's going to be absolutely phenomenal.